From Oscar Steakhouse, inside the Plaza Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, you're on the corner of Main Street. Welcome to the only podcast produced by and recorded in the Las Vegas Hotel Casino. From gaming to dining to entertainment to sports to Vegas history, this is the place to be for the inside scoop, because this is the place to be downtown. Now, here's Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel.
Good to be back on the corner of Main Street on our podcast. Very excited to have Gary here. And Gary, why don't you introduce our lovely guest?
Yeah, sure. Today we're being joined by the first woman to serve as mayor in Las Vegas. Welcome, Jan Jones Blackhurst on the corner of Main Street. How are you today?
I'm delighted to be here too.
Hi, Jan. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Jonathan.
It's long overdue to have you on our podcast. As I was telling you on the way up here, this is all about Vegas history, insight into the industry, and you tick every box on that list. So we are honored to have you join us today, and can't wait to hear about you.
Good.
Yeah, and this is our third mayor that we've had on the podcast.
I guess so, yeah.
We've had the last 34 years of mayors, because you did 2 terms as mayor?
I did 2 terms as mayor.
Okay, from 1991 through
to 1999, and then I ran for governor in 1988, lost that election.
What, 1998? Who was the governor then?
It was an open seat. I ran against Kenny Gwynn.
Oh, okay. So wait, you've always been in politics since you came to Las Vegas?
No, I was never in politics. I ran on a dare because they said a woman couldn't win.
That was it?
That was it.
Who said that? Whose famous line was
Well, there was about 3 people in Las Vegas who controlled all the politics, who are still really the same 3 people that control all the politics. And
can we know who they are?
Sure. Sig Rogich, Billy Vasiliadis, at the time, Kent Oram.
Okay.
And they all said, no, you can't possibly win. And quite frankly, it really pissed me off. I thought, So I ran on a dare.
Okay.
Was as shocked as anyone when I won in the primary, because 3 weeks before the primary, the Fairbanks, which was a big national pollster, showed me 22 points behind, said I couldn't possibly win. And then I did.
Who were you up against?
Steve Miller. Steve Miller was a sitting city councilman who was really distasteful to the gaming industry. Okay. He was a gadfly. He loved to, find evil in everything people did. He was a terrible image for the city. Las Vegas was just starting to grow. In fact, Steve had just opened the Mirage on Las Vegas Boulevard, which was the beginning of the transition to large integrated resorts. And Steve really wanted a different image for Las Vegas.
Okay.
He was building a new Las Vegas. He was one of the few people that supported me in the election. And,
Did he still have the Golden Nugget at the time?
He did,
here?
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
This was a city of gamblers. I was a big gamble. But it was worth the bet, because if I won,
right,
that's what they wanted. So it wasn't a traditional election where people will look at you and not give you any financing because they don't think you're viable. These guys were gamblers. They were looking for a different outcome.
They knew, yeah. And is it the same process as we have today in terms of anyone can run for mayor and then it gets narrowed down to 2 in the final? Is that
yes,
the
if
concept?
you don't win in the primary.
If you don't get 50 plus 1, right?
Yes.
Then it goes into a 2-way race, 2-horse race.
No, if you get 50 plus 1, you're mayor.
Sorry, and if you don't, then it goes into a 2-horse race. And
yep.
so you don't have to say, but do you have a favorite for next mayor in the current race coming up?
I've got a lot of friends in this race.
Yeah.
My bet is on Shelley.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, well, Shelley's been around for a long time. And Shelley Berkeley is...
Yeah, Shelley Berkeley. She was a congresswoman for 12 terms. She was on the Board of Regents, longtime Las Vegan.
Right.
Is running for mayor in a field of good candidates.
There is good candidates. In fact, the other night we had an Oscars dinner series here, and I didn't know, unbeknownst to me, but both Shelley Berkeley and Cedric Creer came to the dinner, and so we thought about having a mayoral debate right there and then.
But that could have been sort of fun.
It would have been fun. It would have been great for the crowd, but no, they both shied away from that. They both asked questions and were very civilized, and it was a fun night. But that's amazing. So you were the first female mayor in Las Vegas, and after you was Oscar, who was basically a mob attorney. So we have a track record of taking risks.
Risk,
as you
exactly.
say. Yeah, and I do want to talk to you about your time as mayor, but for the listener, how did you end up in Las Vegas?
My family owned supermarkets.
Okay.
And they were predominantly in Southern California. They owned Thrifimart, Smart & Final, Ira's company. And we had 4 stores in Las Vegas. And they made a ton of money with their 48 slot machines. But they didn't make any money selling groceries. And my father was very old school. He said, I need you to go to Las Vegas, figure out how to re-merchandise the stores so we're making money in our primary business. And I said, I'll go for 1 year. And that was in 1983. And I came with my then beau, Fletcher Jones, who they had 3 small car dealerships.
Oh, wow.
And we sold the supermarkets in 1986. And then I started working with Ted, and we grew the car dealerships from 3 to 12. And then I started doing all of their marketing.
In the car business.
In the car business.
Is it true that you did some of the commercials for Thrifty Mart? I read that you were kind of known in the city as the one doing the commercials for Thrifty Mart.
I was. I did them with my
amazing.
brother. And then when we did Fletcher Jones, I did them for the dealerships.
It is, by the way, pretty amazing. We're the only city in the world when you go to the grocery store, the supermarket, you can gamble as well with the slot machines.
Exactly.
I mean, it is pretty unbelievable. I love it when I go to a supermarket and then I see people playing slots in the corner. And so that's interesting to hear, though, that you guys weren't making money on the supermarket, but you were on the slot machines. Was it the same? Do you need a gaming license for that at the time?
Absolutely. We had actually the last non-restricted gaming license ever issued in the state of Nevada. And when we sold the company, my dad let it lapse. And I said, why would you do that?
Right.
And he said, because too much money is not good for you. I'm not sure he was wrong.
Yeah, well, it's a good lesson. But that is something very special about Las Vegas, the supermarket culture with the slot machines.
Yeah, I caused almost a riot when I was mayor by trying to outlaw the slot machines in supermarkets.
Oh, you did?
Because,
Okay.
well, I didn't think it was a good community look. We're trying to,
It's not.
you're trying to diversify the economy. You're trying to really talk about what a great place this is to live and work and raise a family. And then a CEO coming in from Des Moines, Iowa, walks into your supermarkets and sees slot machines, and his wife goes, no.
Or every gas station,
Yeah,
CVS
exactly.
around, right?
That is great. So you failed on that? I wasn't able to.
Oh, they were furious.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of lobbying against
they
that.
were well, and my point was, if I thought we were getting discounted groceries because of the slot revenue, but that's not the case.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
You're still
That
paying
just
for that.
becomes an income line.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy actually. You can go to the supermarket and hit a royal flush, go buy extra groceries.
Exactly.
Or more likely the other outcome, which is you lose your money and then you can't get your groceries.
That's true, yeah.
Not a good thing either way. But so then you were running the car dealerships. You were helping with the car dealership.
Yes.
And it got pretty big. I mean, 12 dealers.
12 dealerships, yep.
And then what was what made you want to switch from that, which obviously was a thriving business, into
I was
it was just a bet. It was
a
just
group of politically active women, no, it was more than that, came to me, and Proposition 7 was a woman's right to choose, and we wanted to codify it in the Nevada Constitution. And again, everybody said you'll never get it on. It takes 2 votes of the legislature, a vote of the people. And so I led that campaign.
Oh, wow.
And we were successful. That same
So
group
that's why
of-
we have that today.
Yes.
Nevada still has that today.
We do.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
It was, Las Vegas is always way more entrepreneurial and visionary than people think.
Yeah.
But they came and said, it's an open seat. Why don't you run for mayor? And that's when I went to the political geniuses who all told me I was not electable. John Ralston, who was a friend, called me a dilettante and a huckster.
Oh, wow. He doesn't
Yeah.
have nice things to say about anyone, though. I mean, he were worse things about Oscar as well, I guess, when he was running for mayor. So,
So
but by the way, apparently no one listens to him because you still won.
I still won. So did Oscar.
right, exactly. And so then that's where the process began.
Yes.
So after you became mayor, what was, because myself or Jonathan, we weren't here at the time, but what was, Las Vegas and more specifically downtown Las Vegas back in the early 90s when you became mayor?
Well, and even to add to that, just even when you came here, like what did you see as a city? What made you think that there was better community opportunities here?
when I first moved to Las Vegas in 1983, Las Vegas was essentially Tropicana on the south, Fremont Street on the north, Eastern on the east, and Decatur on the west. When they built Spanish Trail,
Wow.
Ted and I drove out there and said, nobody's ever going to live here.
Really?
Who's going to come all the way out here? So it was, and downtown Las Vegas, when I was first elected mayor, was dying. Whereas 80% of the people who came to Las Vegas used to make one visit downtown. Mm-hmm. Now only 20% of the people who were coming to Las Vegas were coming downtown. And the Mirage had opened. You're beginning to see the shift in focus. And we realized if we didn't come up with a concept to save downtown Las Vegas, the whole history of Las Vegas would be gone. Not to mention 20,000 jobs, huge, at the time, hundreds of $1 million worth of infrastructure.
Right.
So
it always amazes me that Las Vegas, that downtown was sort of dwindling so heavily in those years because you had such great people involved, from Jackie Gorn to Steve Wynn to the Binions. Why did they let it go that way? Why was it happening that way?
I think, it was old infrastructure. The buildings were small. Everything was moving to destination marketing, coming in, resort destination, multiple entertainment venues. We weren't constructed that way. Right. These were old properties on a single strip of land. Right. And so we went through a lot of iterations. They were going to build Star Wars, and they were going to build Venetian canals. That's exactly right.
There was also the floating ones in the sky, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. And then Steve Wynn hired John Jurdy, who was a designer who came up with the concept of Fremont Street Experience, which we all thought, and at the time, this was revolutionary. I think it's lived well. It's had its 30-year anniversary. Yep. But what you did, in essence, was create the world's largest casino, because all the casinos opened onto Fremont Street, which turned in, you took the cars away. Now you have a giant mall that you can turn into convention space. I mean, you've seen it. You can close this off for New Year's. Events. You can hold huge events.
Well, there wasn't the 5 stages of entertainment and all the outdoor bars. It was just generally the canopy.
The canopy with the really, high-end light show.
Yeah, yeah.
And so,
were you in those meetings, those original meetings?
Oh my God, yes.
So was anyone opposing it? Was anyone because obviously Steve Wynn ultimately left, right? He didn't stay for that.
Oh yes, he did. This never would have happened without Steve. We hired Don Snyder, who was the former president of First Interstate Bank, to run it, because we knew if we were going to get this on, first of all, we had to use eminent domain. Everybody hates eminent domain. Public hates it. Yeah. Papers hate it. But we had to do it. And we would have been fine. It's probably the one big mistake I made as mayor. We needed the last parcel, which was the Pappas parcel. And
which is what today?
It is now the one corner of the Fremont Street parking garage.
Okay.
And it was on a backside, but it was a little old woman who owned it. And the city attorney and everyone came and said, we can't afford to pay more than $500,000. And I said, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
Give her what she wants, because you're just going to lose that argument. And they wouldn't do it. So they said, we don't really need her. We can build around her, which they did. And then we went into litigation for the next 12 years. And I think Oscar finally settled with the Pappas family for $12 million.
Oh, wow.
But
that's a great story. I've never heard that one. In all my debates about Fremont Street and its benefits or lack thereof.
Listen,
downtown,
there would be no downtown Las Vegas if it weren't for Fremont Street Experience. As I said, there were 3 major components to saving downtown Las Vegas. First, you had to protect the economic base. Economic base is the casinos. Those are the jobs. That was the driver. That was Fremont Street Experience. Then we needed to consolidate all of the governments downtown. Clark County was getting ready to move to Summerlin. They were offering them free land. And I went to Union Pacific, flew to Maryland, and said, if you sell me 4.5 acres of land at a really good price, I will master plan your entire parcel, because this was a brownfield.
Yeah.
and that'll equitize you.
Okay.
And they said, okay. They actually tried to kill my deal as I was leaving. But I then went and held a press conference on that property and offered the county 4.5 acres of land for $1, because I knew they couldn't say no. Because, well, you use the public.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that got all of our county, the regional transportation, and then the third piece was the courts. There was a failed economic development project, Menominee Tower, which is now the federal courthouse.
Oh, wow. On Las Vegas Boulevard.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We worked with Harry Reid and then with the county to rebuild all the courthouses.
It's named after, is it
Judge Lloyd George.
Lloyd George.
What a
yeah.
gentleman.
Yeah,
One of
okay.
the great judges of all time.
Okay.
And
yeah.
Harry Reid wanted it. He had the money for the federal government, so he called me and said, "You got to find a way to get that land and get it deeded to the city. I'll get you the money from the federal government to build the courthouse."
So all those courthouses were some of the things you set out to. Not obviously that's the main one, but there's other ones.
Oh no, we rebuilt all of the courthouses. All the county courthouses were
in
all
the late
rebuilt.
90s. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned your biggest failure potentially. What was some of your biggest wins besides the courthouses? Did you have?
I think downtown redevelopment was one of my big wins. Building the community. I really believed, at the time in Las Vegas, developments were built 0 lot line, no green space, sidewalks. Go to old Las Vegas Paradise, and you'll see there's nothing. There's house by house by house. There's small sidewalks. There's no green. So we changed all of the way developers had to zone and plan and set aside parks and schools and green space and walking space. Originally, the phase 2 of Fremont Street Experience was to master plan Union Pacific and connect Union Pacific with Fremont Street, with bars, restaurants, walking
really?
spaces. Yes.
Another thing I never knew.
Yes.
And here we are sitting on land across from Union Pacific.
Exactly, where it should have all been integrated.
Connected.
That was going to be the next vision, to have that.
That's fascinating. Wow.
Because this is the only place in Las Vegas where you can build a real downtown. It's equidistant from everywhere.
Right.
Downtown Las Vegas, you're equal to Henderson, to North Las Vegas, to Summerlin. So this is where, to me, I always saw the community center where people would come, because you don't want the Las Vegas Strip being your downtown.
You mentioned that maybe the canopy's run its course over 30 years. Where do you think of things that are happening down here today in terms of
I don't think the
development?
canopy will ever run its course.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Without that, you don't have that safe environment where people still have something they want to come and see.
Yeah.
And I think that as a destination driver, it will live on forever. I mean, I know subsequent mayors have upgraded the light show and done some other things.
There's a zip line now. There's a
Yes.
lot more going on under there. Right.
I still think the key to downtown, if they had the wherewithal even now to extend the canopy down over the
Fremont East?
Yes.
Okay.
Now you start drawing people down
Yeah.
into those areas, and they see. One of my big initiatives that was totally defunded, that I think in retrospect is shown to be a big mistake, is my first city hall meeting. The homeless marched on City Hall, and everyone said, "Oh God, you can't go out there, it's a mob." And I said, "I'm going out there, it's just people." And it was 150 people who were hot and tired and hungry, and they had no services, and they had nowhere to go, and they had no housing. And so in the next 8 years, I built probably the most comprehensive homeless program in...
What happened to it?
It was defunded and dismantled.
After you left
Yes.
office, so we won't need to ask who did that then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It had a crisis intervention center where...
And today they're still trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah. And now they're
But
talking
that's-
about doing it the same way. A crisis intervention center, because
Yeah.
people are homeless. We didn't even have bus systems in the 90s, though. They could
Yeah.
walk in, find a cubicle, whether it was city, county, state, federal, vet, do an intake and then tell you where to go to get services. We had long-term
You
care,
were way ahead of the
short-term
curve.
care.
I mean, this is what they talk about now in California.
That's
and other
right.
places. You were
But
you were 2 decades ahead of the curve.
If we maintained it, we wouldn't have the problem that plagues all of the Fremont Street owners now.
Right.
Because you can do intervention early on, and then you move them into short-term, long-term, and then even affordable housing, that's why you guys probably don't remember Barbara Buckley. She runs legal aid, but she was Speaker of the House and for 10 years in Nevada legislature. And the reason she got that job is she came to meet with me when I was first mayor because she wanted me to co-sponsor an affordable housing bill at the legislature. And I said, sure, I'd do that. And she went up to the legislature and she said, these people don't seem so smart. Yeah. So she ran for office.
So I think one of the sorry, you finished with sorry. One of the things that's fascinating me about your story is what was it like dealing with the Jackie Gorns, the Steve Wynns, the Benny Binions of this world? Can you share any insight into them? Did they all get along? Did they work together? Because for me, obviously, everyone always asks me, well, are you guys all friends down here? And we truly are. I mean, we all work together. We share information.
So were they. These were the best of the best.
Yeah.
You know, they were old school. They knew their business. Now, they were focused on gambling. Their business was gambling.
Sure.
Probably the real first visionary who saw it, that there were multiple revenue streams was Steve Wynn.
Yeah.
He saw that you don't have to just make it on the gambling. But they all worked together. They were competitive, but they were collegial.
Yeah.
They were honorable. If they told you something, they stood by it. There was no, they were not duplicitous.
Yeah. You mentioned that Jackie would share with you like how much money they made.
When I was first elected mayor, they had a book.
Yeah.
I'll never forget Jackie showing it to me. And they all shared how much money they were making every month. And Jackie was so proud because he was doing $11 million in EBITDA at the El Cortez.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he said, what do you think the number one moneymaker is on the Strip? And everyone would have said Caesar's Palace, but it wasn't. It was the Flamingo.
Was it really?
It was Flamingo.
This is in the 90s?
Yep.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
He was very proud of that.
They should be so transparent today. I'm sure he was. I tell everyone he's someone I try to model myself after in many ways. The way he took care of his team, his people. He was a great guy.
The gentleman of all gentlemen, and anyone who ever worked with Jackie were loyal to the end. But Jack Binion was exactly the same way. Honestly, so was Steve. So was Bill Boyd. So was Mike Ensign.
It's hard to imagine that there's such strong-minded people that they must have been disagreeing because the market kept shrinking down here. They must have been coming to some level of frustration.
They had some real screaming fights over the Fremont Street Experience. If you read Don Snyder's book, I think in one meeting, I don't know if we're precluded on podcasts, Bill Boyd looked at Steve Wynn and said, "Steve, shut the fuck up."
Well, that must have been a sight. Steve did once recall the story to me of how he recalled the Fremont Street Experience coming to be, and he said that one time he walked into a boardroom and there wasn't a seat for him at the table, and he lost his mind, and they put a chair for him on the back wall. Yeah. And he said he totally lost his mind. I don't know if that's.
It could be true. They were. We were like the last outpost of Western civilization.
Yeah.
And there was a mindset, I grew up in California. You can't fix California. But Las Vegas, you can build Las Vegas.
That's so true. That's what I keep telling everyone. This is like you said, you can make a difference here.
You can make a
difference. It's an evolving city.
When I was first elected, 15 million people came to Las Vegas. When I left office, 35 million people came to Las Vegas.
8 years.
We put in place probably $60 billion worth of infrastructure, beltways, highways, secondary water delivery systems, built the mass transit system. People don't understand in 8 years to be able to build 50,000 hotel rooms while still, I've never understood why other cities don't model LVCVA as a way to build their destinations.
Right.
It used to be a park and rec board.
Yeah.
Which is why you've got the number of people sitting on it.
Well, it is funny because as mayor, you're actually not over the Strip, right? But
No.
but because you're called the mayor of Las Vegas, you have the brand of being basically.
Oh, particularly in the
face of
90s.
Yeah.
I was the mayor of Las Vegas.
Right,
In
right.
fact, Clark County passed an ordinance that anyone holding a press conference in a county building had to have a commissioner present. And that's because nobody wants a commissioner.
Right.
I love you, commissioner.
Yeah, exactly. No,
but
but
they
you're
don't.
right.
They
don't.
want the mayor of Las Vegas.
That's right. It's such a
And-
prestigious title, even though it doesn't oversee the Strip and has no authority there.
And huge in the 90s because we were the fastest growing city in the United States for that entire decade. So everybody was coming to Las Vegas. But my problem was nobody wants to see the community you're building. They just want to know what you're doing
Right.
in the resort corridors.
You had mentioned earlier that that there was no public transit system.
None.
When you,
No
I
buses.
just take that for granted now that
Right.
we did that. You know, we have the public transit system, and most major cities had it for
I'll be
decades.
controversial. I still think it's very primitive. I mean,
Oh.
having lived in other cities, it's particularly unimpressive.
That's because it didn't even exist
Right.
to mid-90s.
Right.
It was a for-profit. Barry Perea
Okay.
ran a bus system that sort of ran up and down the Strip, but it never went out to any of the communities. There was no connectivity at all. There was funding from the federal government in the early 90s that created regional transportation centers, which is, so now there was money to start building flood districts. And
Right.
Amazing.
Wow.
One of the other things that I know you did while you were mayor was the Neon Museum came to life.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
The Young Electrics, Steve, I'm forgetting his name,
Okay.
but he came and he said, look,
That's Yesco for
yes,
the people
Yesco.
that know Yesco is the neon sign company. Yep.
they came and said, I've got all these old signs and they're outside in, he called it the boneyard, and we're going to have to throw them away.
Oh wow.
And I said, oh, no, you're not throwing them away. I'll find a way to preserve these signs. And I had a young woman working with me at the time at City Hall, Barbara Molaski, and I said, and Barbara was very much into
I just
the
talked
arts.
to Barbara today.
Yes. I said,
That's
Barbara,
lovely.
your job is to go out and figure out how we raise the money to protect these signs. And that became the beginning of the Neon Museum. We put up, while I was still in office, the Horse and Rider. We mounted that on middle of Las Vegas Boulevard. And the Aladdin sign used to be at the end
Yeah,
of
at the end of
Fremont Street.
Fremont. Yeah. Where is it now? It's gone.
It's in the Boneyard.
Okay.
Yeah.
We also had on our podcast Virginia Valentine, who was your city manager.
Yes, but she
mistaken.
was also the head of regional transportation and
Okay.
flood district.
We talked to her at length about the floods.
Yeah. She's we used to, when I first moved to Las Vegas, when it rained, so Charleston Underpass
Yeah.
filled up with water.
It's insane.
Completely.
Wow.
I once was trying to take my car around a car when it was raining, and I floated it. All of a sudden, I was floating down the street. People don't.
How did you get out of it?
I floated to
Floated
the
to the
sidewalk. Yes.
Wow.
To the low ground.
Yeah, hit low ground.
Well, I'm glad you fixed that.
Me too.
Or Virginia fixed
Virginia.
that as a team. That's unbelievable.
And then Virginia came and worked for me at the city, and then she ran the county, and now she runs the Resort Association.
Yes, and we're members of the Resort Association, and she was a great guest, showing a lot of the things happening in the city. We did talk to her a little bit about, and more Michael Naft actually, in the Clark County Commissioner, but about the water situation in Las Vegas. Do you have any thoughts on that, and how bad is it, or is it overly?
I think it's a little overhyped.
Okay.
And I will tell you why.
I love you for saying that. Thank you.
Las Vegas is one of the lower basin states. We're on a limited allocation of acre feet, which is how water is measured.
Okay.
So it's not we're running out of water. We don't have enough acre feet because when the negotiations happened, California and Arizona, faster growing states, took all the water.
Yeah.
So, and we didn't need it. So now it's just a negotiation. It's for barter. What are you going to trade to increase?
There's water out there. We just
There is
figure out a
water.
way to
We
get
just
our
need
share.
a way to get it down here. We were actually talking about in the early 90s bringing groundwater from Pine County, bringing that down to Las Vegas. But we rebuilt the water delivery system in the 90s, and that was the problem, is you didn't have the capacity to pump in the gallons of water you needed, but now you do. So water is not, do we need to be sensitive? Do we need to be thoughtful of how we preserve, a precious resource?
Yeah.
Yes. But are we running out of water only because we have limited acre feet, not because we're running out of water?
And that's a deal you think can get done?
Of course.
I guess
There's always
any
a deal
deal
you
can
can
get
get
done.
But that deal's been in place now for 60, 70 years, right?
Right.
Like that percentage hasn't changed for the state of Nevada since
You've
the
got
treaty was
acre
signed.
feet in other states that aren't being used.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
a question
That's where we need
of
to go.
buying unused acre feet.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what you're willing to pay for it.
Right.
I read a really interesting article that there are 40 farmers who use more water than the 5 lower basin states. So
Combined.
combined.
Wow.
It's irrigation.
So there's
That's
water.
what the water wars were about in California. That's where the water's going.
Yeah.
It's going to
So,
flood farms in California.
okay, so that leaves us room for hope.
There is
that's
room
encouraging.
for hope. It's, again, do we need to be thoughtful? Yes. But to pretend we're going to dry up and there's not going to be any water is just,
It's not right.
no.
Yeah. So let's switch to after post-mayoral life. So we get a chance to get to the questions as well, Gary. Where are we going
Yeah.
next?
No, I did want to ask, did you ever consider running for a third term as mayor after you didn't win the governor?
Not really, because I never ran for mayor because I wanted to be in politics or because I needed a title. I ran for mayor because I really thought I could help build Las Vegas into a world-class city, and that I had a vision of how I could build the neighborhoods and expand people who wanted to live and work here and raise families. And then my passion became education. Well, if you study Nevada politics, everything is controlled by the state. And the gamers wanted it that way.
Right.
Because they didn't want local governments or elected officials messing around with their taxes or their allocations. So anything, if you really wanted to change education, the structure of education, funding, you needed to be a governor. So that's why I ran for governor. I ran for governor because I wanted to finish the job that I started. Las Vegas, by the time I left office, was basically built out. Summerlin was on master planned. It had been turned over to Howard Hughes. It was, so, the city's landlocked. It's not like North Las Vegas where you've got 2,000 acres of. So the reason I didn't run for mayor again was I felt that largely I'd done what I set out to do.
Right.
And I'll tell you, it is a funny story, though. They came to me, Terry Potticelli, she was the city attorney, deputy city attorney. And she came and she said, Mayor, we've drafted all the documents. We're giving the land to Howard Hughes, all the land in Summerlin. And in exchange, they're going to master plan and develop it. She said, but I do want you to know the language says that if they develop it, they get the land. But if they don't develop it, they still get the land. And I said, I'm not signing that. And she said, well, everything's been signed and planned. And she said, you looked at me and you said, tell him the bitch mayor won't sign. So they redrafted all the documents.
Oh, wow. But just for the listener who doesn't know, there's a difference between Howard Hughes Corporation and the Howard Hughes, the individual.
Yes, Howard Hughes Corporation was the master developer.
You weren't giving the land to the guy on the strip?
No.
Did you ever?
No, he had basically, I don't know if he died, Bob Mayhew, who ran everything for Howard Hughes, was still here.
Okay.
Although my former father-in-law once made a deal with Howard Hughes to buy all of the land out by Bonnie Springs. And he said basically they just put papers underneath the door at the Desert Inn. And he'd sign it and put it back
Never
out.
saw him, just put them under the door. Wow.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
You mentioned Villa d'Este before we started. That's the old Piero's. What was like the hangout spot where everyone went back in the day? Was it Villa d'Este?
Villa d'Este and then Piero's, but there was a Piero's on Karen that backed up to Commercial Center.
Oh.
And that's where everybody went.
What is that now?
Nothing.
Nothing. Just the
It's-
Commercial
yeah.
Center, which is nothing basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
So then after you finally get out of politics, then you go into gaming.
Yes.
For the first, I guess, real time since the supermarket chains, right? As the executive vice president for Caesars. How did you transition out of mayor into that?
It was very interesting. Phil Satry was a friend of mine and colleague. We went to Stanford together. Phil was the CEO of Harrah's, which had just moved from Memphis to headquarter in Las Vegas. And I was doing work for the Convention Authority, and I went to see Terry Lanny and Phil and, all the boys, because after having worked with them, you knew you needed to have everybody aligned with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And Phil called me the next day, and he said, "Hey, look," he said, "I've just created this new job," and he said it's going to run all of corporate communications, all of government relations, all of corporate social responsibility. Here's what it pays. You want it? And I thought, sort of what I was doing. Same messages, different constituency.
Right.
So I said, sure. And I ended up working.
What year was that?
That was 1991. No, 1999.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah,
1999.
Oh, wow. So you've been somewhat connected to Caesars for 25 years.
They had just opened in New Orleans. And Phil said to me, "You picked a great time to join the company. We just opened, and in 4 months they were bankrupt again, and I was deployed to New Orleans for the next year to try to fix the tax."
My word. So if you can, following that trajectory, you were there for the takeover in 07, 08.
Oh, yes.
With Apollo and the famous book about that.
We were Harrah's.
Yeah.
Harrah's purchased Caesars, which was a shock to all the Caesars people because they thought they were so much better than Harrah's, which was a slot place.
Was Marilyn Spiegel there at the time?
Yes, she was.
Because she was on our podcast, so she talked a bit. But Phil went to the Win afterwards, right?
Phil retired right before we acquired Caesars.
Okay.
Gary Loveman, who was a Harvard professor, took over.
Created Total Rewards.
Yes. Well, everybody says they created Total Rewards. I know at least 7 people who created Total Rewards.
Yeah, okay, fine.
John Bauschy, I think, really created Total Rewards. But
You heard that here first.
Gary took data analytics to a whole new height in gambling. And then Phil was brought in to win after Steve was disgraced, and they needed stature,
Somebody
and that's
else.
Phil.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got it.
And
So you went through that transition, and also, did you ever come across Tony Santo?
I love Tony Santo.
Because he
was one of my dear friends.
Oh, wow. He was here at the plaza he was my mentor here. He was the person that was
What
here.
a guy.
Yeah, and he passed away a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Very
In
sad.
fact, my phone rang, and it said Tony.
I had the same.
And I went, and it was Michelle.
It was Michelle. I had the same.
And I
crazy
went,
story.
oh my God.
I was in LA, and my phone. I said Tony. I thought, oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a crazy moment for me as well. I didn't realize you guys were so close.
Oh,
He was very close to me. I went on holiday with him.
He was one of the great. To me, he was the old Las Vegas.
Yeah.
They operated differently. Now, I lived through 11 years of Apollo. I respect their ability to make money, but they're a whole different. They're not the guys that we built Fremont Street.
Different model.
Yeah.
Different model. But that was, Apollo was like the Great Recession years, right? 09, 10, 11, 12.
It was Apollo TPG. We
Right.
were the last major private equity acquisition made before the crash.
Right.
And then I think there was a little ego because we probably should have reorganized shortly thereafter, but we just kept doing all of these complicated transactions, and it's like the good banks and the bad banks.
And you just stayed there the whole way through.
Stayed all the way through.
And then,
then we were acquired by the Carranos.
Which is the craziest story ever because they did it during COVID.
They did
it while they were shut down. How does that work?
It was amazing because first they came in and everybody said, oh, they can't do this. You know, people were sort of bidding. Carl Icahn had bought the majority of our stock or control in our stock.
Yeah.
And he wanted to sell. And so he brought in the Carranos, and I'll never forget Tom Reeg and Brett Juncker saying, we're going to take $500 million out of this business. And I was going, no, you're not. Well, they sure did. And they did it without impacting customer service or quality.
Wow.
Tom Reeg, during COVID, I never forget, I called him one day because everything shut down.
Right.
And I said, Tom, I've lived through 4 CEOs. I said, one of them would have been blaming everybody else. I said, one of them would be curled up in the corner crying.
Right.
And I said, and you just keep moving. He says, yeah, I go into my room at night and close the door and scream. But they're very balanced.
I mean, to close that deal during that time was...
And they did it.
Guts beyond belief.
And then I was honored that in the merger, they got 6 board members. And then Caesars got 5 board members. And they okayed for me to be one of the board members.
How great.
So that's how I ended up on the
board
Caesars
today.
board. Yep.
So the obvious question is, how do you keep going? What motivates you? You've had this unbelievable career. What excites you? What motivates you? What keeps you up going?
The next game.
Yeah.
It's like we just finished, we're doing a downtown, well, not down, valley redevelopment initiative called Locate. And Locate is where we build economic development around major events coming into Las Vegas. The first being the Super Bowl, because we think you can go to CEOs and say, if you're really interested in moving your company, come and we'll show you the community beyond the neon.
Yeah.
We'll show you schools, parks, where you live, introduce you to, the med school and the superintendents. And everybody said, you can't make this happen. You'll never get all the city and the county and everybody to work together and give money, and then you'll never be able to get CEOs to do it. Well, I'll be darned, we've done it. We got the city and the county and North Las Vegas and Henderson all to give money. We've got 15 companies who are seriously interested in coming here, who we're going to entertain and show them the Las Vegas that we know, which helps diversify the economy, which helps everyone.
Just going back to your time as the mayor, did you think that this town would become such a sports city as it has?
With time.
Well,
With time.
Yeah.
Not even as mayor. You're with the LVCVA now, right?
Yeah,
How many
I'm-
years
yeah.
have you been on the board of the LVCVA?
I was the chair of the LVCVA in 1992 to 94.
Okay.
And then I've been back on the board for the last 4 years.
So pretty much all sporting initiatives have somewhat...
The guy from Texas came to me when I was mayor, and he was going to build a big stadium right behind you. It was going to be,
Yeah.
at the time, people always believed sports would eventually come here. It was just a question of when.
Right.
And the timing and getting the right parties involved. You have to say the
And
Golden Knights have done a great job. The Raiders have done a great
Fabulous.
job.
Yep.
Even though the Raiders can't win, they're still doing a great job.
Oh, I went to
Entertaining.
the game. I would say 75% of the stadium
Kansas.
was Kansas.
But I'll tell you why that is. One, if you're in any other market, you want to come
Right.
to Vegas for a weekend away.
Yep.
What a great place to go for a game. But more than that, the Vegas fans can sell their tickets for a premium because
That's
of
right.
that. So a lot of the locals are selling their tickets for a premium, and then we're 70% Kansas City Chiefs. Were you there you were there on the Chiefs game? Just
Yep.
When they sang the national anthem, I didn't know at the end of the song the Chiefs shout something. And
Oh, yeah.
I got like
Home of the Chiefs.
I got like a
Home of the
fright. They
Chiefs.
just
Yeah.
the whole stadium yelled. I was like, oh my god, this whole stadium is basically Chiefs fans.
Yeah.
But the
They-
Vegas fans all yelled Knights.
They
Even though
they're in their
yelled
part.
Knights.
It was
The
very. It
folks
was
from
very.
Vegas called Knights.
The Knights was very weak compared to the Chiefs, if that's what they were yelling at
Right.
the end. That was
It-
much more resounding.
The doubters who were really wrong when we were looking to give the first public funding for Allegiant, they said, stadiums are not economic development. Well, maybe they're not in Des Moines, Iowa, but
Yeah.
they are in Las Vegas.
They sure are, yeah.
Because you have a venue that we can fill that we wouldn't have otherwise, which brings that many more people.
So then, I've been told I should not be more positive because I have questions about it. But what was your take on F1, and how does the LVCVA look at it from your perspective?
I think the LVCVA would at first look at it and say, huge success. The race was fun. People liked it. Brought in a huge European clientele, very high end.
Yep.
If you're a small businessman or someone living in the community, I think you'd have an entirely different perspective.
Right.
You'd think, what did this do for me?
Right.
Except cause me aggravation. And I couldn't go. I couldn't see it. So I think LVCVA is going to have the responsibility to really look, if we're going to keep F1 and I have every belief that we will.
We will, yep.
How do you make it benefit the entire destination, not just a small area that's right adjacent to the track?
That's the key.
Yep.
Because if you call it a citywide, which I said earlier, but if you call it a citywide, it's got to benefit the city.
That's right.
It can't just be a high-end exclusive
No.
event that benefits the rich or
No.
the higher-end properties, because that's not a citywide then.
That's correct.
But if it takes the city's business or resources, it needs to be a citywide.
And I think county commissioners, when F1 is going to be asking them for $40 million in additional funding for roads and street improvements, have to think about, what are my constituents?
Yeah.
What are they saying? What's in it for me, and how does this make my life better too?
Exactly right. So, Gary, so we don't keep Jan here all day, and because Oscar's is about to open for dinner service.
Yeah, you can start to hear some of the echoes and the dishes in the background.
Chef's giving me the eyes. Let's ask Jan some of the questions.
We went to social media to ask a few questions, and we posted a picture of you with the
a very
plaza
cool
behind you. It's a
picture.
black and white picture that we found. It was amazing.
It was the LA Times. This is what a big deal it was when Las Vegas elected a woman. The LA Times ran that as a front page story.
Oh, wow. How cool.
And
well,
then
this
Jack
picture's
Pinion-
going to be our social media image for this podcast.
And
Absolutely.
you can see Fremont Street, that's Fremont Street. So there's no anything. It's just a street.
All right, we could just look straight down and see the plaza. So we just have a few questions. We won't take up too much of your time. We got Jeff Jank from Instagram asked, questions about the Fremont Street Experience. How much of the project nearly 30 years later turned out as expected? Were there any unexpected outcomes?
You know what? I think it pretty much turned out as we expected. I think with more vision, and had it not been quite as controversial, we would have built it longer. We would have connected it to the plaza, and we would have gone east of Las Vegas
You're not just saying that because you're with me. You genuinely...
No, I genuinely believe it.
Okay, good.
Because I think that's what saves the downtown destination.
Yeah.
You know, we built that, the theaters, but the Fremont Street Experience ended, and it really hurt the ability to draw people down that way.
That would be great to see a canopy over Fremont East and expand that over.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's done its job. It's
It
brought
has.
tourism
It
to
has.
downtown, to put it back on the map, whatever the other ideas were. I know we're not big fans of the zip line necessarily, but
you know
but
what?
the concept.
I would agree with that. The zip line would not have been anything I ever would have put there, because I think it's a distraction from what is a pretty spectacular
Well,
show.
without getting into that whole conversation, it does pay for a lot of the needs out there. So I guess that's why it's
but
there.
that's why they short-term thinking. That's why they tore apart all the homeless programs, and look what you have now. What you could have solved for $10 million a year is going to cost you $100 million a year.
Great point.
All right. I have at bhark85 on X asked, what is your favorite thing about living in Las Vegas? And what is the one thing that you wish people knew about Las Vegas?
My favorite thing about living in Las Vegas is the people. And I think what makes it unique, everybody comes from somewhere else. Generally, where you come from, you grow up in neighborhoods, you grow up with the same friends. In Las Vegas, you come from other places, so you pick your friends.
Right.
And people are just, I love the people in Las Vegas.
It's a melting pot.
It is.
You meet people from all over the world, and where everyone wants to make it a better place.
That's right. And you don't have to judge. It doesn't matter where you came from. It just matters who you are and why you're here.
That's right. And I do what you were talking about earlier, but the people that are coming here have such an opportunity to build a city that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, I don't think. I mean, some people say there are the places, for sure there are, but they're not they're more established. This is just like a blank
This is like a blank canvas
Yep,
where
that's
you
it.
can really build something special. And I think that's what I like most about still living here is you still have that entrepreneurial spirit. That you still have, I can do this.
Right.
Do you have any secret
Latest
hangout
frontier.
spots? Any secret restaurants? Or
Oh, I'm
places?
so boring. Mastrioni's.
Okay.
That's,
That's your spot.
Mastrioni, Elia's.
Oh, I go to Elio all
Yeah.
the time. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, lovely. Okay.
Yeah.
We got one last question. Dustino F. Holland on Twitter or on X asked, please tell us your best Bob Stupak story.
I loved Bob Stupak. So Bob Stupak, for those of you who don't know him, he owned Vegas World. And Vegas World is where the Stratosphere is. And it was the dumpiest, down and out, dark, and he was supporting Steve Miller. And he used to call me Girly. Hey, Girly. You're not going to win. And he always had a toothpick. You're not going to win, but if you do, you come see me. And when he first did the Stratosphere, the reason it goes up the spike, he wanted to be the tallest building ever built in Nevada. So that's why it went up, to make sure.
With the extra spike on the top.
With the
of the roller
extra spike
coaster?
on the top.
Wow.
He built the Stratosphere, the whole thing?
He sure did.
I know the place wasn't doing well. I thought he came up with the junket packages.
No, he was the developer.
Okay.
And he was with Lyle Berman, who's a big poker player.
Yeah.
And Lyle managed Indian casinos in Minnesota. And then they went public, or they were going to go public. But anyway, he went bankrupt. And then they did all the refinancing and restructuring.
Okay.
But Bob he ran for mayor, and he sent every senior in town a little potted plant. He almost won, too.
At the same time when you were running?
No, this is before.
Yeah.
I can't remember when he ran for mayor, but.
Okay. Before you ask your famous last question, Gary, I have one thing I want to talk about. Are you still involved in responsible gambling and the initiatives of that?
Absolutely.
And what does that look like in terms of the efforts of that? Because I think that is an important thing, even though we're a casino, to
People have to understand it's just customer service.
Yeah.
It's not. It was one of the first things I put in place at Harrah's, which was the Code of Commitment, which was a commitment to the community to give back to employees, to give them good jobs and good wages, and to customers to be responsible in your practices. And you find a lot of your employees, if they know you care and you give them tools, listen, you can't identify a problem gambler, but you can train people that if they see a customer in distress, to show them where they might go, a number they may call.
Yeah.
And I think it makes your employees feel empowered. And I think it helps the industry, because if legislators believe we're a responsible industry, they will legalize us to a greater extent.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a very big issue when you go to online gaming and even expansion of sports gaming.
It's a big difference.
Big difference.
Absolutely. And do you work with Stephanie Goodman on that?
I don't, because
she's in charge of the responsible gaming
at AGA. Most of those programs were built by Harrah's in the 1990s. So we built those programs.
Awesome.
I'm glad they're executing on them.
Yeah, and now they're in all 48 states.
That's right.
Perfect. So our last question we ask all of our guests, and thank you again so much for your time. Any life advice you'd like to give to our listeners or young people looking to move to Vegas?
People always say, what is running for mayor on a dare was a huge risk. Best risk I ever took, because it's probably one of the best jobs I ever had. If you don't take a risk, even if you fail, so what? Maybe it opens a door that you never expected, that opens another door and another door. Las Vegas is all about risk and calculated risk. So don't be afraid.
Yeah. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
That's right.
Perfect. Appreciate you taking the time, Jan. Really
Pleasure.
great to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Are you a fan of On the Corner of Main Street? You're listening, so we'll assume that's a yes. So share the love, rate, review, and tell a friend to subscribe. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @PlazaPod, on Facebook, Plaza Podcast, and feel free to write to the man himself @Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time, right here on the corner of Main Street.